Welcome to 5-Minute BTech channel.
You know the feeling, right? You're completely lost in some amazing game world or maybe a VR experience, and everything around you just looks so incredibly detailed. It honestly feels like magic. But what if I told you that all of that visual complexity, it's all built from an incredibly simple, almost shockingly basic set of rules? Well, that's the secret we're going to crack open today.
So, to really get how these worlds are made, we've got to look past all the fancy textures and the lighting. We need to see the structure underneath it all, what you might call the digital skeleton.
And that skeleton, it has a name, the mesh. Seriously, every single object you see, from a character's face down to the tiniest detail to a giant skyscraper, it all starts its life as a mesh. It is the absolute blueprint for every shape in a virtual world.
So, what exactly is a mesh? The best way to think of it is like a net or a web. It's a whole bunch of flat shapes called polygons, all stitched together to create the illusion of a solid 3D surface. It's basically the wireframe that gives everything its form. Now, not all meshes are the same. You've got your regular meshes, which are these simple, predictable grids. They're great for flat stuff, but where the real magic happens is with irregular meshes. Here, artists can stick points wherever they need to, creating all those organic curves and complex details. And yeah, these are by far the most common type you're going to see out there. Okay, so a mesh is a collection of polygons. But what's a polygon made of? Let's keep peeling back the layers here. We're going to deconstruct this whole thing all the way down to its most fundamental piece. Right. The surface of any mesh is just made up of these smaller, flat shapes. And this actually reveals a huge secret about 3D graphics. There are no true curves. Not really. There are just tons and tons of tiny flat polygons all lined up to look like a curve. And of all the different polygons, the triangle is king. Why? Simple. It's the most basic 2D shape you can possibly make. It's guaranteed to be perfectly flat, which makes it incredibly efficient for computers to draw or render, millions and millions of them every single second. Okay, let's go one level deeper. A triangle, or any polygon really, is just a shape you get by connecting a few straight lines. We're getting really close to the core of it now. And waterlines. Well, a line is just the shortest possible path between two points. And that's it. We've pretty much hit the bottom of this digital rabbit hole. And here we are, the point. Or if you want to use the industry term, the vertex. This is it. This is the fundamental, the atomic particle of the entire virtual universe. Every complex object you have ever seen is, at its very core, just a massive, organized collection of these individual points floating around in space. Okay, so we've got our object, built from millions of points. Cool. But an object just floating in a void isn't very useful, is it? It needs to exist somewhere. So how does a game engine know where to actually put it? This is where two different coordinate systems come into play. First, every object lives in its own object space. Think of this as its personal bubble, where its own center is always at the coordinates 0, 0, 0. But then you have world space. That's the master grid for the entire scene. The engine just takes the object from its personal space and plops it down exactly where it needs to go in the bigger world. So we know what models are made of, and we know how they get placed in the world. But how do artists actually create these complicated meshes from nothing? Well, turns out there are two main ways to go about it. The first method is called boundary representation, or BREP. This is kind of like digital sculpting, where an artist is meticulously defining every single surface, edge, and vertex. The other way is constructive solid geometry, or CSG. This is more like building with digital Legos. You start with simple shapes and then combine them in clever ways. And CSG is just incredibly powerful. Check this out. You start with a basic cube. Then you bring in another shape, like this sphere, so they overlap. You then perform what's called a difference operation, and bam, you've subtracted the sphere's volume from the cube's. The result is a brand new, more complex shape. You can add, subtract, and intersect shapes all day long to build pretty much anything you can imagine. So, we've gone from a huge virtual world all the way down to a single point, and then back up to see how these awesome models get built. So what's the one big idea you should really take away from all this? This is it. This is the fundamental truth of all 3D graphics. It doesn't matter how realistic or how insanely complicated an object looks, it is always, without a single exception, built from the simplest geometric pieces possible: points, lines, and triangles.
And why is this so important? Because understanding these simple building blocks is the key to everything else. You can't make a character move or a spaceship fly without knowing where its points are. You can't figure out how light should bounce off a surface or how a building should realistically crumble without first understanding that underlying geometric mesh. This simple foundation is what makes all the complex magic we see on screen even possible.
So next time you're exploring a digital world, just take a second to look a little closer. Try to see past the surface and just imagine that simple, elegant geometry that's holding the whole thing together. And that really leaves us with one final thought. Once you know the basic rules of creation, what kinds of worlds would you build? If you like the video, hit like and subscribe the channel, and I'll meet you in the next video.